Greetings everyone, this is Jed Schlackman, and for this video I'll be speaking about the subject of trauma, especially how we can work toward healing trauma or resolving it, and looking at different aspects or elements or stages that can occur as we work toward that goal. So if we think about trauma, we think about experiences we have that are very stressful and overwhelming, experiences where you're not really prepared to process or cope with what's occurring, at least not in a conscious, mindful type of way. You do have some coping mechanisms that get triggered sort of from an unconscious level. So things that you just do instinctively, in a sense, without thinking, in order to protect yourself. So you might go into a fight or flight or freeze mode. You could do different things that are designed to protect you or help you escape from feeling and experiencing the distress that you're encountering in that situation. So people often get stuck in those states, or they tend to reactivate those reactions in the future in situations where it would appear that it's not a healthy response. And that's where the phrase post-traumatic stress disorder or syndrome is often used. So we want to explore how we can actually bring about healing so that the past experiences are no longer disturbing us, no longer creating stress within us on either a conscious or subconscious level, and therefore no longer controlling how we're reacting to things in our life in the present. So we can be more really centered and present and mindful in how we respond to life and how we interact with other people or deal with the various situations and circumstances in our lives. So if we think about trauma, it's a memory, an experience we've had, and we have kind of a story that's been built around that experience that gives some type of meaning to it. So it's our subjective story, our own meaning that we give to what occurred. There may be, in a sense, some objective facts about the situation or circumstance, about what an observer might have perceived occurring, but we have our own subjective meaning, our own way of thinking about, of feeling or reacting to that situation and responding to it. As a very simple example of this, suppose that you're a child and you happen to get bit by a mosquito. If you're a child who's not really sensitive to mosquito bites, you might barely even notice it, and you might not really have any attachment to that experience. That moment just comes and goes. You might have felt some slight sensation for a moment, and then it's over with, and you're no longer thinking about it. You're no longer reacting to it. It has no more significance or relevance to you. However, if you're a child who is actually very sensitive to mosquitoes and to their bite, and who doesn't feel at ease with that experience, who feels in some way troubled by it, then that child could actually carry forward some type of stress or trauma subsequent to that moment, to that experience. And then in the future, whenever there's some perception of mosquitoes in their environment, they'll start to go into a reactive, protective mode where they might want to get out of that situation. They might be hypervigilant and ready to swat the mosquito in an instant, So they're in a different state of consciousness. That's kind of a mild example, but in our lives there are some much more extreme types of examples where we carry a very strong and intense reaction to something we've experienced, when at least theoretically or hypothetically we could have been psychologically prepared to cope with an experience so that we wouldn't have gone into that stress response, so we could have actually remained more calm and present during a situation or experience and allowed it to unfold and pass, and been able to let go of that and then move on with our life without carrying the stress forward with us. So that's just to help us see how these things are somewhat subjective, how trauma is in part the interaction between the consciousness of the person or being having the experience and the actual circumstances of that experience or environment. So we've created this story within our consciousness about what occurred, and in that story we tend to feel some type of unpleasant emotion, and we feel like a victim, like something bad or negative has happened to us, and it's in some manner upset the integrity of our own being. So we feel wounded, we feel in some way no longer healthy or whole. We might feel some shame, some embarrassment, some fear, some anger or resentment. So we're in some way holding on to that experience. We haven't been able to release it, to let it go, and allow ourselves to be free to go forward. If we want to look forward to the healing outcome that we desire, we can think about transforming that story. And to do that, we often need to go through some type of forgiveness process where we're not attaching blame or judgment to ourselves, and we're also not holding on to the desire to, in a sense, blame or condemn the other person, or to seek some type of retribution or vengeance toward them or anything like that. We're able to release the experience, to accept that it's occurred. We can't undo it. Even if we could do something in the present to apply what we think is some type of justice, it's still not undoing the unpleasant experience that we had in the past. So it's not actually removing that experience from our consciousness. It's just helping us shift our story about the whole situation, where in our minds we may believe that if another person receives some type of consequence or punishment for something they did to us, for their mistreatment of us, then that gives us permission in our own mind to let that situation go. But that's really just the story we're telling ourselves in our mind. We could choose or allow ourselves to let things go, regardless of what consequence there may be for other people involved. And we could also consider that it's possible to transcend our story into bringing ourselves into a non-victim identity, where instead of seeing ourselves as the victim of an experience, seeing ourselves as somehow less than whole now, as somehow no longer worthy or desirable or healthy or strong or whatever quality or attribute we may wish to embrace for ourselves. We could recognize that our essential self, who we truly are, is not at all affected by what occurs in the human experience. So our limited human identity is not the same thing as our core identity, our essential self, our pure consciousness. The human self inevitably is going to have unpleasant experiences and suffering and things that seem unfair or unjust or sad or tragic, whatever label we may attach to those experiences. But really they're just experiences that are temporary and short blips in terms of the vastness of our whole being, of the infinite or eternal nature of the journey of our consciousness. So as we start to identify more with our spiritual self, with that more transcendent aspect of who we are, then we're less likely to hold on to that sense of being a victim, of being limited by those past experiences, or by the identity or sense of self we may have attached to at that particular time. So this is a big part of this process of healing, of moving through and beyond trauma, where we can see our experiences as just part of our soul's journey, part of our personal growth, where we can even see that having those experiences may have led us to expand our consciousness in ways that we wouldn't have otherwise been motivated to or catalyzed to. So in that sense, those traumatic experiences or stressful experiences are actually beneficial for us. They're in some way helping us gain greater understanding of ourself and of life, perhaps greater compassion for others, deeper appreciation for this process of fragmentation and separation that our consciousness experiences. We can understand how we go through those processes, how we lose our sense of integration and wholeness, and also how we can reclaim it. So this is really a big part of the healing process, reclaiming that sense of wholeness, recovering our true identity, and actually embracing all of our experiences, even the ones that may have been upsetting or disturbing to that version of ourself that was present in that particular time. Once we evolve, we're able to reflect upon and look back upon those experiences and give a different meaning or significance to them, where they are part of our spiritual evolution, and they don't actually limit us. They don't actually demean or diminish who we are. They actually contribute to a deeper understanding and awareness of that which you might call self or identity. So I encourage each of you to explore more about the process of healing trauma, of bringing these shifts in consciousness and of perspective into the different layers of your being, helping the conscious mind as well as subconscious layers, including the physical body, embrace that sense of wholeness, that feeling of being balanced and harmonized. A lot of the difficulties and challenges with trauma come from the body holding on to the memory and producing reactions on the chemical level and the energetic level that relate to trauma and the emotions and thoughts that are connected with the trauma. So if the body is able to rest and settle, then it won't be inclined to activate or trigger the challenging emotions and thoughts. So we can work on all these different levels to help things kind of settle, to help ourselves be more present and mindful and able to just appreciate each moment of life without it being controlled by our reactions from the past. For those that are interested in holistic health and wellness and spirituality, I invite you to watch some other videos, some other talks I've given on these subjects. You can also visit my website, which is phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com, where you'll find more about the healing services I offer and other educational resources that are available. For now, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful day. Namaste.